Ghost Ship Games just did their On the Horizon live stream, and I have to say that Season 5 for Deep Rock Galactic is shaping up to be the biggest and best season that we have had to date. So much information was revealed, so many things were announced, and it's time to go through all of it. So the On the Horizon live stream for Ghost Ship Publishing just happened, and a lot of things were announced. So many things, it's kind of hard to wrap my brain around everything. From things involving Deep Rock, to things involving Rogue Core, to so many other things. It's just been a huge, wild ride to see the entire live stream. So I'm going to compile all of my thoughts into this one video and tell you how I feel about everything that is coming to Season 5 in Deep Rock Galactic and beyond. And strap yourselves in, because this is going to be a wild ride. Okay, so first, to give a little bit of context to the earlier parts of the stream, they had actually started by talking about some of the other projects that they have been working on. Things like Spell Rogue, Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, Dino Lords, and things for those games are looking pretty promising. They're coming along pretty well, and progress on them seems to be very good. But I know you guys are more interested in seeing the Deep Rock stuff, so I just want to say that it went pretty well with the earlier publishing games, and I am very excited to play some more Spell Rogue and some DRG Survivor, and also finally get my hands on Dino Lords whenever it comes out next year. Then after that, they showed their roadmap for the upcoming 2 years, and one thing that I can tell people are not going to be too happy about is, similar to this past year, there is a big gap between Season 5 and Season 6 of Deep Rock Galactic, about a year, and also the fact that Rogue Core was delayed significantly, which is something that they had actually pointed out. And the reason why they had said that is, not only are they transitioning studios and transitioning buildings, which they had talked about at the top of the stream, but they were also talking about the fact that they were dividing their time between two projects, between Deep Rock Galactic and Rogue Core as well. And they had mentioned that throughout the entire production of Season 5, Rogue Core was basically not being worked on for the last 4 or 5 months of the progress. That kind of delayed a lot of Rogue Core to a big extent. So they did kind of make the decision that they need to kind of work on one project at a time. So now that Season 5 for DRG is pretty much done, with the exception of, the month that we have left, the month or two that we have left. Once that is said and done, then it's going to be full steam ahead on Rogue Core to where they can finally get the closed alpha out and then eventually the early access release. And this also means that during the time that they're working on Rogue Core, there's not going to be too much progress on Deep Rock Season 6 or even maintenance updates that come out for Deep Rock Galactic during the time. But I think that it's still a good thing, and I'll explain why when I talk about the legitimate mountain of content that we have coming in Season 5. And ultimately, I think this is a good decision for them to do. Instead of dividing their time up and half tackling two projects, focusing on one thing at a time, so that way both products are polished in a way that they're proud of. So now diving into the metric ton of content that is with Deep Rock Galactic Season 5, they released so much for it. For starters, the name of the season is referred to as Drilling Deeper, which I think is a very cool and awesome sounding name, and it refers to the theme of this particular season, which is drilling deeper and going deeper into Hoxus, similar to the theme of Rogue Core. However, it's not 100% in lieu of that. It still has that same sort of notion of you're going deeper and deeper into the core of Hoxus, which is really, really awesome. And the reason why we're going deeper into the core of Hoxus is because of the new mission type which was added, which is known as Deep Scan. And let me tell you right now, this mission is looking like it's going to be my new favorite mission type just because of the stuff that I've seen. Basically, the way that this mission type works, from what they have explained, is we are essentially looking for Morkite seeds, which apparently is something that can happen. Apparently Morkite can grow, and the company wants to grow their own Morkite, which is kind of interesting. And the mission itself seems to be a mixture of egg hunt missions and escort missions with some other interesting tricks thrown into the mix. Basically, the way the mission works is you are trying to find these Morkite seeds. And in order to find these seeds, you need to find these resonance crystals, which can tell you the location of where these seeds are located. Now, in order to do that, you need to use this scanner, which you can see in the top left here, that basically tells you how close you are to a crystal. And from what the devs say, there is no visual indication of where the crystal actually is. You just need to get close to it and then try to find out where it is. And based on that, you find the crystal, you hook up this thing to it, which basically amplifies and triangulates the position of the Morkite seeds. And once you do this 2 or 3 times, then you can start the next phase of the mission, which is where Mission Control sends down this thing referred to as a drill-evator, which just looks and sounds incredibly cool, that will then take you down deeper into the ground to where the Morkite seeds actually are. And this is a very cool sequence. And this is where the Escort duty-esque type feel comes from, because you're on this elevator that's drilling down, that's making a lot of noise, and now you have to defend yourself from these massive groups of enemies that are A, trying to attack you, and B, also attacking the elevator, which you have to also repair and maintain as it goes further and further down. So this, I think, is going to be a really, really cool segment of just going down with the drill-evator, and then you end up in this huge, massive area where you actually find the Morkite seeds, as well as some other really cool minerals and rock formations, and this is where you actually gather the resources that you need to complete the mission. And to escape, they've decided that it was a really cool thing to give us. I can only refer to them as super jet boots, which apparently will just let you jump all the way up the hole that you just wrote down to get back up to the main cave system to get to the extraction pod, which sounds like an insanely cool concept. And I'm very excited to see how this is going to work. Overall, I really like the kind of scenery that these Morkite seed cores have, and I just like the concept of this mission type as a whole. Again, it has several different parts to it. It kind of derives from a couple of different mission types, combines them, but adds its own little spin to it that I am really, really interested to see how it's done. Then they gave us a little bit of information regarding the new seasonal event, and by little bit, I really do mean little bit, because they kind of only just showed us what it was. Basically, it's this thing known as core stone that we're going to be gathering that is in these large purple crystals, and then they really didn't say much of anything about it. They kind of left it vague, and I feel like they did it sort of on purpose. I feel like it's not going to be nearly as simple as just we break open this rock and collect whatever's inside. There's definitely going to be something else to it. I just think they didn't want to quite say exactly what it was just yet, but either way, we're getting a new seasonal event and it looks really cool. And then they revealed the details of probably the thing that people were scared about the most, which is the new enemies. Now, I'm sure a lot of people were a little bit skeptical about this section because the last time we got new enemies added into the game with Season 4, they were a little bit polarizing to say the least, and they were not super duper balanced, but these enemies look, at the very least, incredibly interesting. The first enemy we have is the Barrage Infector, which is like the cousin to the Spitball Infector, which I personally am a little bit terrified of, but also it looks really, really cool. Basically, this is a different variation of the Spitball Infector, where the Spitball Infector fires one gigantic globule of death that comes towards you. This thing is almost like a shotgun blaster. It fires a spread of smaller projectiles that function almost like mines, essentially. It sprays them out in this big fan pattern. They attach themselves to the ground. They didn't necessarily specify if they can attach to the players, although I would assume they'd be able to. And then after a short delay, they burst and deal damage. So it's a little bit different than the actual Spitball Infector. Overall, I'm interested to see how these function. I can't imagine they're going to be quite as troublesome as the Stingtail and Septic Spreader on release, just because they're stationary. So at the very least, you can hide from them, which is good. Depending on how much terrain destruction the mine projectiles have, that might change things up, because then you might not be able to hide for too long. But overall, I think that this is at the very least going to be an interesting enemy that's going to shake things up a little bit. Then we got the Vartak Scale Bramble, which looks absolutely repulsive, but also incredibly interesting at the same time. It kind of has the same vibes almost as the Corlock Tyrant Weed, but a little bit different. Basically, the way that this thing is going to work is this is also a stationary enemy, and this is going to be on ceilings and walls, basically, kind of similar to like cave leeches or something of the matter. But don't worry, it's not going to grab you, at least as far as I know, it's not going to grab you. This thing will fire projectiles at you, and its main core body seems to be invincible. It seems to be undamageable based on the hard plates. And instead, what you have to do is you have to take out the 3 glowing pustules around it to take it out. And the image doesn't really show it too well. They did say that the pustules are going to be a lot farther away from the core of this creature than it shows in the images. So keep that in mind, that you're probably going to have to go around a little bit to find these things. One thing I am a little bit curious about is the scale of this thing. They didn't really show how big or small it was. I don't know if it's going to be something that's really tiny or something that's very big. It it's something that we're just going to kind of have to wait and see. But overall, I think that it's a very interesting concept. And based on how annoying or difficult it will be to take out and how much damage it does, I think it's going to be the big determining factor with this thing. But overall, I definitely like the design of it. And then lastly, we got something that I'm sure everybody was assuming was inevitably going to happen, but we're kind of scared that was going to happen. But we got an invisible bug added into the game with the Stalker. Basically, this thing is a stealthy attack bug. The way that they describe this thing is similar to the Menace, but in a melee form, where it's kind of like a hit and run type bug. It will attack and then it will retreat to sort of try to get the jump on you. They describe it as being very quiet and stealthy, and it trying to sneak attack players when they're not expecting. So these things, from what they describe, are not going to really be attacking you with the main swarms. They're going to be attacking you on their own and trying to disrupt the team play by sneak attacking each individual player. And they did say that these things have a electrical attack that has the ability to disable your shields for a short period of time, which is going to be very interesting if these things attack you right before a big swarm happens and then you're kind of just left standing there. So overall, in terms of new enemies, again, I like the design. We'll have to see what they're like on release for me to get a real grasp of how they function. But overall, I think the concept and the designs for them are pretty interesting. As scared as I am of an invisible bug just sneaking up on me out of the blue, I think that it makes a whole lot of sense, and it is also very interesting. So next up, we got some information about some of the overclocks that are going to be coming in Season 5. Remember that we're going to be getting one for each of the primary weapons, so 12 in total, but they only showed us 4 in this particular stream. But even those ones that they showed us are pretty good. They showed us one for each class, and the one for the engineer is pump action for his shotgun, and it basically makes it a lot more powerful and do a lot more damage at the cost of less rate of fire and ammo. This looks pretty good, and I know a lot of people are probably going to be happy about this because they think that the shotgun is a little bit lacking in power and doesn't really have as much punch as it should, and this is just going to help propel it a little bit further and give it a little bit more damage output, which I don't think anybody's going to complain about. I myself am very excited for it. We then got mortar rounds for the gunner's autocannon, which is very interesting because it pretty much turns the autocannon from a flat cannon into an artillery gun. Basically, the projectiles supposedly are not going to be hit scan anymore. Instead, they're going to be actual physical projectiles that will lob and have arc and have an insane explosive radius. So for crowd control, this thing is just going to be monstrous, but for single targets, it's not going to be that great. And you might want to be careful with the friendly fire on this one. But essentially, this is going to be an insanely fun one to run at the very least, and I think is going to be great for missions where you have to deal with constant swarms a lot. Then we got the Inferno for the Driller, which from what I can gather and from the way that they describe it, basically makes the Driller's flamethrower able to sort of charge up a shot similar to the Cryo Cannon's Snowball and Ice Spear, and then fire out this big line of fire that will burn anything it touches and leave behind this trail of fire around it. So similar to kind of how the Breach Cutter for the Engineer works, it makes this big line that goes out and leaves electricity behind it. The flamethrower will be able to do something similar to that. And I can only imagine how crazy this is going to be. And I'm very excited for this. The flamethrower is probably my personal favorite driller primary. And I'm very excited to throw this on to my flamethrower and just burn everything around me. And then the last one we got, which I think is probably going to be one of the most powerful, is the Scouts Marked for Death for the M1000. And what this does is it basically makes it so that way the focus shots for the M1000 don't really do that much more damage. However, they apply a debuff to the enemy that makes it so that way they take more damage from all sources. And this can be really insane, especially for team-based combat. You throw this on a dreadnought or an oppressor or just something big, and not only does it mark the enemy physically to where your allies can see them, it has like the red outline around them, but now they take more damage. This can be very, very useful and can propel damage output up significantly. In solo play, it might not be quite as intense. It does still apply if you're by yourself. You will still deal more damage to it, but it definitely in team-based, this is going to be absolutely insane. So overall, all of the overclocks that they've shown have been really, really good for starters. And they did say that technically there's going to be releasing with 13 overclocks because one pre-existing overclock is going to be heavily reworked. So I'm not sure exactly which one that's going to be, but look forward to that as well. So technically we're getting another overclock as well, which is nice. And then as always, they showed us the new performance pass and the kind of stuff that you can get from that. In my personal opinion, these new weapon frameworks that we're getting with this season are the best looking ones that we have had to date. I love the look of these. I love the sort of futuristic style look that they have. They just look fantastic to me. And as always, it has good cosmetic stuff, some good mustaches, some good colors, and just plenty of things that you can unlock. So nothing really new with the performance pass, but always good quality stuff. And then we got something that I wasn't even expecting, which is a new difficulty. Yes, you're going to be able to do a much higher and much more difficult option when it comes to going through missions. Basically, the way that this is going to work is that it's linked to an assignment that you have to complete fully on hazard level 5. And essentially, if you complete it, you will then unlock hazard level 5+. And what hazard level 5+ allows you to do is to further increase the difficulty of your hazard 5 missions by adding different modifiers to them. Things like aggressive enemies, which makes them attack you more often and have more damage. Tough enemies make them significantly more resistant. More enemies make literally more bugs spawn during the missions. And player vulnerability basically makes you more susceptible to damage. So this is a way to sort of further progress and further challenge yourself. Not necessarily hazard level 6, but it might as well be. And I think that this is going to be really good for a lot of the veteran players out there who just look for more and more of a challenge, as that is something that just players in this game love to do. I was not expecting this, and the fact that we got this is going to be a very, very good addition for a lot of people. I know that there's a lot of mods that add like hazard level 6, 7, 8, and that's fine, but this is something that is corely being added into the game, and it's also being done in a way that I think is unique instead of just adding another hazard level. So I think that this is a really, really good addition. And then they went into a little bit more details about the seasonal selection system. Not too much more than what they've already revealed before. You're going to be able to select the season that you want to go through. You will be able to earn experience on that particular season, no matter what mission you're in. The only real difference is that if you're trying to get the script from whatever particular season you're on, you might want to join lobbies that are also in your particular season, because then you have a higher chance of getting the events that will give you the script. So for example, if you're on season 2 and you want to get those data racks, you might not necessarily want to join a season that is in 3 or 4, because they're going to be getting plague hearts and more meteors, whereas you're going to want that. But if you're not worried about that, you can just do whatever mission you want, and any experience you get will be progressed towards your particular performance pass. And then honestly, there was a lot of extra stuff that I wasn't even expecting, but just things that they wanted to add in that were just nice. For example, the promotion tracker for all the super veterans out there. Basically, once you get to maximum promotion level, so 3-star legendary, once you keep promoting after that, you will instead see the new border that has 4 stars and then a number in between them that tells you the number of times you've promoted past that final stage. It wasn't something that was super duper necessary, but at the same time, I think it's great for all the veterans out there to show just how much they have been playing the game. And overall, I think this is a great way to express your veterancy, how much of a graybeard you are, how long you've been with the game. And overall, I think that this is a really cool little flex edition that they gave us. And then out of the blue, they decided to give us more mutators, more positive and negative mutators that can apply to missions, which is something, again, I was not expecting, and I'm very happy that we got them. We got 4 new ones, 2 anomalies, and 2 warnings. And they seem to be very interesting. We have blood sugar, which basically makes it so that way there's some sort of toxin in the air that causes enemies to drop red sugar when they die. The problem is that toxin is also dangerous and poisonous to the dwarves, so you're constantly losing health, but enemies drop red sugar. So you basically have to just keep on killing enemies to survive, but you are pretty much probably going to be at full health most of the time because of just the amount of enemies that you fight, especially depending on the mission type that you're on. So this is a really interesting one. And then we have secret secondary, which is something that gives you a second secondary objective. That means you'll have 3 objectives in the entirety that you can complete. Again, since they're secondary missions, you don't have to complete them, but this means you can have some insanely good payouts if you do all 3 missions. Granted, it means the missions are going to be a lot longer if you decide to go for both of them, but that's still pretty good, and I honestly really like this particular mutation. I am curious on what that's going to mean if you get this on, say, a lithophage mission, because then you would have like 4 objectives that you need to complete, which would just be absolutely crazy, but you get an insane payout for that. And then for the 2 warnings, the first one we have is duck and cover, which basically just makes it that way more ranged enemies spawn during a mission. I'm guessing ranged enemies are things like the Spitter, the Septic Spreader, the Mactera, Trijaw, pretty much anything that just has any form of ranged projectile, which is definitely an interesting concept. And I think this is actually going to give a lot more value to the gunner and his energy shield and make it so that way it's a little bit more focused around him. And overall, I just think it's a good hazard in general. It's not too crazy, it's not too wild, but it's also effective at warping the combat. That way you have to deal with specific enemies. And then the last one we have is Ebonite Outbreak, which makes it so that way Ebonite glyphids actually spawn in the mission itself rather than just in the Ebonite mutation event. This is kind of interesting because this means that now you're gonna just randomly have enemies that you can't hurt outside of the pickaxe. Now, they did say that this particular mutation is going to come with a way that you will be able to get your power attack more often. So that's going to make things a little bit more interesting. And also the Berserker perk is just naturally going to go up in value with this. And ultimately, I think this is just really cool to see event-specific bugs taken outside of their particular event and thrown into the normal fight. I think that's a really, really cool idea. So overall, I think all of these new mutations are really cool and really welcome. And I think they're going to shake up gameplay a lot. And then they announced a lot of different quality of life additions and changes that are happening. For example, the Cosmetic Filtering. Yes, you're finally going to be able to filter out your cosmetics to show specific things that you want to see. If you just want to see headgear or anything like that, or things that are linked to a specific season or a specific festival, you'll be able to see all of those particular things categorized and separated for your use. And I think this is going to make putting outfits together so much easier because you're going to be able to look for that specific thing that you want, which is fantastic. And then they announced that they're adding over 20 different new cave generations, which I think is always a good thing. And it's been a while, as far as I can remember, since we last got a lot of cave generations added. And this is going to help shake up missions immensely just because we're going to be seeing new caves, new terrains, new layouts, and it's just going to make missions that much more interesting because now you're going to be seeing new areas that you haven't seen before and new pathways that you've never seen before, which is always a good thing. And then out of complete left field, something I did not think was even going to be touched was a rework to the Escort duty mission. It's not a full-blown rework. It's not going to take longer or shorter, but basically what they're doing is they're adding a new attack to the Armor and Hearthstone defense stage to sort of shake it up a little bit and make it be a little bit more interesting, similar to, say, the Caretaker fight. Basically, what they're doing is on top of the floating rocks and the laser crystals that come up at you, they're adding a third attack to the Amaron Hearthstone's arsenal, which is basically this big rock claw that comes up out of the ground and immobilizes the player and stops them from moving, that they have to bust out of it using their pickaxe or their drills or what have you. And the way that this is going to work is it's still going to go swarm, attack in terms of the phases, but during those 2 attack phases, it's going to be a random chance of you getting this, the rocks, or the crystals. So it's similar to the Caretaker where you will get 2 of them, but you will never get all 3 of them at once. So you might get this and then the rocks, or you might get the crystals and then this, or you might just not get this at all, if that makes any sense. And overall, I think that that's a really interesting change. I didn't think that the Escort duty mission needed this, and I wasn't really craving for anything like this, but the fact that they just decided to add this in was really, really cool. And I think that this is going to help bring a little bit of life and a little bit of new interest into a already pre-existing mission type, which I think is always a great thing. And then lastly, they talked about the weapon maintenance system, how we're getting not 1, not 2, but 3 new skins added in with this new season, which I'm very much surprised at, which is super, super cool, and I'm excited for that. The skins also look really, really interesting. And then just a couple of other things that are going to be coming in the coming weeks, such as the Armor DLC announcement, the key art reveal, the full release date, the narrated trailer by Mission Control that I'm so much looking forward to, and a lot more as well. So overall, that was essentially the end of the stuff that they had announced. So talking about everything as a whole, like I said at the top of the video, I think this is going to be the biggest and most successful season that Deep Rock Galactic has had. We are getting so much added into this particular season that it's almost hard to believe that season 4 happened and then we get something like this. A new mission, a new event, several new enemies, new overclocks, and reworks to things that we had not even asked for, as well as so many different things that people had been wanting for a long time, like new difficulties, cosmetic filtering, so many different things. I know that we didn't get a perk rework, which is a big thing that people have been wanting, but I think that the things that we got outside of this are going to suffice significantly. And to put it plainly, I think Ghost Ship really cooked with this season. They kind of saw what had happened with season 4 and they were like, okay, we don't want this to happen ever again. And so they just brought out this, in my opinion, banger of a season that I cannot wait to start playing. The mission type, I think, is going to be a lot of fun, and I think is going to help shake up a lot of different situations. And it's going to be very fun to go through, and you're going to be constantly doing several different things. It has different phases, which I think help break it up. The searching phase, which is kind of like low and slow, versus the drilling phase, which is very high intensity, fast paced, a lot of combat, and then the collecting, which I think is going to be a very interesting sort of reward system. I'm still curious as to what the new seasonal event is going to be, on what exactly we're going to have to do in order to get these particular 4 stones, because I can't imagine it's going to be that simple, but we'll see. The big thing that I am concerned, or not necessarily concerned, just sort of skeptical about, is the new enemies. Not because I don't think that they're going to be good. I think that the design around them is really interesting. I think they fit perfectly fine into the world. Again, I just want to make sure that the balancing of them is fine. Now, these kind of seem to me a little bit in a better situation just because 2 of them are stationary, so at the very least you can always hide from them. And then you have the invisibility one who, yeah, it definitely does seem like it could be a little bit of a stingtail situation where it's just a very oppressive enemy, but depending on how they handle it, I think it could be done very, very well. And if the new overclocks that we're getting are anything like the ones that they decided to show us, if the ones that they decided to show us are the tame ones compared to the rest, I think that we're in for some really interesting build crafting changes. Overall, I think it's safe to say that this season is shaping up to be fantastic, and I am very excited to get back into the swing of things when it comes to Deep Rock. And I know a lot of people are a little bit upset about the fact that, again, there's going to be a big gap between this and Season 6, but keep in mind that, again, they are going to be working on Rogue Core, which, personally, for me, I really want to see what good comes out of Rogue Core. So if that takes time and precedence, I'm willing to make that sacrifice. And also keep in mind the fact that they are adding in the seasonal switcher, especially for people who have, again, never played the game before and are just getting into it now. They have a ridiculous amount of stuff to work towards that's going to take them way more than enough time to get everything that they need before Season 6 comes out, before Rogue Core comes out. They're going to have their plates filled for a while. So those are my thoughts and first reactions to this Season 5 info dump that we got with the On the Horizon stream. Overall, looks incredibly promising. I am very, very much looking forward to this. I am excited to see what happens. I cannot wait to try out the new mission type. I cannot wait to try out the new event. I cannot wait to be able to just play with all of these new tools, try out the new caves, and also just be able to catch up on the past seasons. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you think this is good, if you think this is bad, if you think they're over-delivering, if you think they're under-delivering, let me know what you guys think down in the comments. And stay tuned as more Season 5 information comes out, as I will try to keep you guys updated as best I possibly can. But anyway, I hope you guys found this video entertaining and informative. If you did, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and maybe become a member, as it tells me what types of videos you guys want to see. Rock and Stone Miners, I'll see you in the next video.